So at last we're down to the last Mega Man game on the NES. I must say that Mega Man 6 was a pretty decent way to end this chapter of the series thus far, as there's a bunch of details that I'm just waiting to get into. With that said, no real intros or openings this time around, we're just gonna dive right in. This is Mega Man 6. During the time of Mega Man 6's release, the Super Nintendo was already on the market, which caused the sales for the inferior NES to decline. To complicate the competitive market for Mega Man 6, the spin-off title called Mega Man X was also released as an early title for the SNES. And once again, we have yet another contest to choose the designs of the new Robot Masters, this time with over 200,000 entries. There were some complications with the designs of the new Robot Masters meeting up with the development team's busy schedule, but as Inafune concluded, for having hit a lot of roadblocks, I feel like we've got a lot done for Mega Man 6. Mega Man 6 has had some positive and mixed reviews by gaming magazines like EGM and Famitsu, but whether or not those magazines will hold any weight is something we'll find out right now. The story is something that's painfully simple as always. It's a Mega Man game on an old console, what the hell did you expect? Our story starts off with a contest of fighting robots being held by a man named Mr. X. Are you fucking kidding me? Yes, that is who you fucking think it is. It's no spoiler that Mr. X is actually Dr. Wily in a disguise bad enough to rival the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and yes, he reprograms the robots to start shit, and yes, we're going to beat the ever-living shit out of him. Only difference being is that this time around, Mega Man actually captures the old bastard. At least now we no longer have to worry about Wily terrorizing towns in later games. No, couldn't keep a straight face. The Robot Masters in the game are from various countries within the game's story. Flame Man is from Saudi Arabia, Wind Man is from China, Centaur Man is from Greece, Night Man is from the UK, Yamato Man is from Japan, Plant Man is from Brazil, Blizzard Man is from Canada, and Tomahawk Man is from the US. As much as I like the designs of these Robot Masters, I can't really get behind Tomahawk Man, as his design is based off the stereotype of the Native American people. Why not instead have a Robot Master based on a fat guy with a shotgun in one hand and a Big Mac in the other while screaming racial obscenities? No? That's what I thought. Though I can't get behind Tomahawk Man, I can get behind his weapon. In fact, I like just about every weapon in this game, even the ones that were reused from the previous games. Flame Man's Flame Blast gives you a fire projectile that can be used to melt ice. I find that it also works great on mini-bosses. Plant Man gives you the Plant Barrier. It's just a standard throwable shield, but it does have a few uses. The Blizzard attack from Blizzard Man is 4 snowflakes that can shoot through walls. Use this to take out enemies from a vantage point or to pick off cheap enemy placements from behind a wall. Tomahawk Man, Yamato Man, and Night Man all give you simple projectiles that behave a little differently. The Silver Tomahawk curves up at an angle, which can be used against enemies on high ground if your aim is good enough. The Yamato Spear can be thrown at high and low heights, and it's also the definition of spam. And Night Crush lets you send out up to 2 mace balls that return when thrown. Centaur Man gives you Centaur Flash, which is the only weapon I barely use for obvious reasons. Finally, we have Wind Man and his Wind Storm. This weapon functions like the gravity hold from the previous game, which lifts enemies up into the air. And it's still hilarious. What makes these weapons stand out to me most is that they all have very reasonable energy usage. Sure, the Mega Buster is still a very viable weapon, but I also don't need to constantly worry about energy usage, which allows me to go a little bit nuts with most of the new weapons, especially the Silver Tomahawk. The stages have gotten a little bit of an overhaul compared to the previous games. Most of the time the platforming seems pretty streamlined without too many dickish moments, but that can also be attributed to the help of some of the weapons. The most notable change to the stages is that we now have multiple pathways to complete them. This is mostly to help with the return of beat, which you must complete the stages using the alternate path in order to get one of 4 parts for our robotic feathered friend. You can access these alternate pathways using the new Rush adapters. Instead of having Rush come along and help us like we normally would, Rush instead jumps inside Mega Man and transforms him into 2 forms as though he was a pint-sized Megazord from the Power Rangers.
Go, go, Power Rangers!
These new forms are called Jet Mega Man and Power Mega Man, and they both come with interesting abilities. Jet Mega Man lets you take flight for a short period. You can only fly so high from your initial flight point, but it's still useful for moving around platforming sections. Power Mega Man allows you to hurl energy punches and break cracked objects as you charge up a punch at point blank range. It's not much useful for anything else, but some alternate paths have a cracked block that you need to break to reach them, and the blocks can be fairly well hidden in some places. Not to mention that some of these areas hold all sorts of goodies to help you out. Though you can't slide with either of these forms, they also don't require energy, which is pretty freaking awesome. And speaking of energy, there's a new item called the Energy Balancer which can be found hidden in Tomahawk Man's stage. Unlike before where you needed to equip a weapon in order to refill its energy, the Energy Balancer does it automatically to the weapon that needs the energy most, so long as you're not equipped with a weapon to begin with. I'm going to hop into the ups and downs of Mega Man 6 a little bit early, because unlike the previous games where there are one or two brand new things that were added, here most of it was adjusted to some degree. First, let's talk about the problems. A big issue with Mega Man 6 stems from what Mega Man 4 and 5 suffer from: lack of new content. These games tend to recycle old ideas such as weapons and give them a slight makeover, which still doesn't make it original material. Sure, there were one or two new weapons, but even then the next game reused it, like the Star Crash from Mega Man 5 and the plant barrier here. But that also leads us to the strong point of Mega Man 6. The adjustments that were made. As I mentioned before, the weapons in Mega Man 6 don't consume as much energy as previous titles, with only the plant barrier and the centaur flash using the most energy. This makes most weapons an option to use for the fun of it rather than having to save the weapon's energy for when you really need it. Another example of the good changes are the alternate pathways and stages. These are great for keeping the idea of platforming stages fresh, as the hidden pathways will reward you for going out of your way to find them. Which then gets me to the new Mega Man forms, which are needed to access most of these pathways. Jet and Power Mega Man have more uses outside of just finding hidden items. Jet Mega Man is incredibly useful for taking on the trickier platforming sections, and Power Mega Man can help take down some enemies. The bosses in Mega Man 6 feel more balanced too. In other games, the bosses and Robot Masters had patterns, but were still fairly difficult because they were either erratic or did a lot of damage. The bosses in Mega Man 6 have patterns that are not completely obvious, but they're still exploitable with enough observation. To make things better, E-tanks and extra lives are more plentiful as you can still use them without worrying too much about the road ahead, but also not overabundant to the point of having too much. And that's a key word for Mega Man 6: balance. I've found that Mega Man as a series has a very hard to reach niche when it comes to balancing out gameplay while making it challenging and fun. Most of the Mega Man games are more on the hard side, with ways to compensate for the difficulty. Mega Man 6 instead compromises and offers multiple ways for you to play the game but still have a comfortable time. You can be reckless with the bosses but still have a backup plan because E-tanks are more common. You can take the normal path without getting beat and still not have to worry about an enemy giving you a hard time. Or you can use just about any weapon you want throughout the game without needing to worry about your energy, so long as you don't spam the hell out of it. Of all the Mega Man games I've played so far, I can say for sure that Mega Man 6 is one of the games I will return to just to have a good time, even if it's not the most original title of the series. So that's going to do it for this review. Next time we're going to be taking a look at the 16-bit games, starting with, of course, Mega Man 7. This has been Rignella, wishing you to have fun, and to take care.